The following episode may, and most likely does, contain spoilers, foul language, and KFC's 11 secret herbs and spices. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Not Pat, Not Mike. I am not Pat.
And I am not Mike. And thank you for joining us as we continue our journey through the Nintendo lifespan.
Yes.
So if you tuned in last week, we hit the NES, we hit the SNES, and we really wanted to hit the N64, but turns out there's a lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot. Honestly, like when you started like naming games, I was like thinking to myself, like, all right, I thought to myself, like, N64 wise, I was like, well, the only really games I played for were like this, and this, right? And then you started like listing games, and I was like, oh, and that, and that, and that, and that. And holy crap, there's a lot of these games I played on the 64. Like, what?
Right.
What?
So we have, as a collective, decided N64 is going to be its own episode.
Yes, there's a lot of information.
Well, there's a lot of information. This is a big turning point for Nintendo.
Yes.
And this is also the system that hit us.
Yeah.
Because this came out in 96. This came out in 1996.
8 years old.
You were 8. I was 6.
Yeah. I was like in the middle of like my actual adolescence.
And I'm going to call in phone a friend here. Producer, can you look up when the GameCube came out? Because I believe there was like a 2 or 3 year before the Cube came out. So I would have been 6 to 10.
Yeah.
And this is the system I was playing.
Right.
Which is really bonkers to think back and be like, all the shit I played while being only like 6 or 7 years old.
It was probably 2003, I'm going to say.
2001.
2001.
Close.
Okay, so there's 4 years that we had the 64 before the Cube came out.
Because the issue, like most consoles only last 7 years, which is why a lot of people are afraid about the Nintendo Switch because we're coming
Unless you're the
7.
Xbox, then you put out a new one every year.
Yeah. But yeah, like there's so many, like, all right. Again, I'll ask the question that I asked for the Super Nintendo. When you talk about the N64, like when you think about like when you were a kid,
Yep.
there was what's the game that you imagine yourself playing when you're playing the N64?
Perfect Dark.
Perfect Dark?
Perfect Dark.
That's great. That's a great game. For me, it's GoldenEye.
All right, basically the same game, except mine has multiplayer.
Right. Mine had multiplayer.
Yours had 2-player multiplayer with no bots.
It had 4-player multiplayer.
Did GoldenEye have that?
It had 4.
Perfect Dark had bots. So you could be on a team with 3 of your friends and play.
Yeah.
But there's a caveat. So we're gonna take a sidestep here because the 64 also introduced a lot of attachments that the NES and the SNES did not have. One of them was a multiplayer cartridge. I can't remember its name.
Right.
But at the top of the Nintendo 64 was a expansion pack that you could actually pull out of the system and you could replace with a new one. And to get that expansion pack, you had to buy Donkey Kong 64.
Originally.
So,
the interesting fact about the expansion pack is that before you could just buy the expansion pack, the only way you could buy Donkey Kong Country 64 was with the expansion pack added into it. Because when Donkey Kong Country 64 was announced and introduced, it was freezing up N64 consoles. Mm-hmm. And they were like, okay, well, what do we do? So the games are starting to get bigger because they were in the I think the middle of the N64's life cycle now.
Okay.
So like Donkey Kong Country 64 was the first game that were released like that was like pushing the limits of the N64. So they were like, well, we'll just pair it with the expansion pack. Mm. So the only way you could buy Donkey Kong Country 64 was with the expansion pack. There was eventually a limited release afterwards where you could buy the game without the expansion pack, but I would think that was like 2 years later.
Right. And
by that time, almost everybody had it because a lot of the games now, like
a lot of the games required the expansion
Majora's
pack.
Mask required the expansion pack.
Yeah, and then like I said, Perfect Dark, because you could play 2-player Perfect Dark with just the basic pack that came with the N64, but to play 4-player, you needed the expansion pack.
Right. I know the only reason why I know that the expansion pack was eventually allowed to be sold separately was because I remember my grandma got me Majora's Mask for my for Christmas, And when I got it, I was so excited to play it. I was like, oh my God, opened it up, put it in it, right? Would not work. And I was upset. I was
that sucks.
maybe like 9-10 years old.
So I lucked out because, so here's another throwback to our childhood. Blockbuster Video.
Yes.
You used to be able to rent video games from there and buy video games and everything like that.
Could you rent the expansion pack too?
You could rent the expansion pack and you could also buy the expansion pack because Blockbuster would buy the Donkey Kong game.
Yes.
And they would only rent that out, but then they would have the expansion pack as a separate thing that came with it, and they would sell that individually.
I wonder if that's how I actually got mine.
I know that's how I got mine.
I think I went to a store. I remember going to a store.
Because, I mean, it's 1996. You can't Amazon it.
No, yeah.
You can't walk into a Walmart or a Kmart. Right. Well, Walmart doesn't really exist. You can't walk into a Big K.
Right.
But the N64, as far as I know, was also the first Nintendo system that had a memory card option. You could put the memory card in the back of the controller to actually save game data. The SNES might have, because I didn't play it and I don't know.
It also had a Rumble Pack.
And it had the Rumble Pack, which was pretty impressive.
Yes, that was awesome.
I mean, back in 96, that was this state-of-the-art thing.
Oh, yeah.
You could also get different color consoles. You could get different color controllers. Like the NES or the Nintendo 64 console came with the basic gray controller, or you could get the see-through purple controller, which was my jam.
Yes.
Or the later released special edition see-through green, and then you had the Hey You Pikachu controller.
Yes.
Then I mean, like
they had the little microphone attachment,
right? And I mean, they were just selling it like you had to have 4 different color controllers if you had a Nintendo 64. You had to.
What is it about like
see-through purple?
Yeah,
it's the best on everything.
It's the best one. The purple's not my favorite color, but it's the best one.
The see-through purple N64 controller. I had the see-through purple.
I had the see-through purple
Game Boy Color.
Yeah, Game Boy Color. Yeah,
Game Boy Color. And actually, I'm thinking about they sell Switch cases now. Like you can just pull off the plastic of your Switch controllers and everything and replace it with see-through purple. And I think I'm gonna buy it.
Right.
Just because like I need to.
Something about that was like it was the best one. I also had a lime green Game Boy Color.
Yeah,
there was the 2 that I owned.
It was either that or like a matte blue that like was okay. Yeah. It was like the color of your shirt. Like it was like this is blue.
Yeah. It is oh my god, man. There's so many good. So
we got to keep going. We got to keep going. There's so much to go.
So like
N64, what they did is they took a bunch of games, they brought them out, and they slapped 64 on the back of them. So we got
Super Mario 64.
Mario 64. We got Star Fox 64. We got Donkey Kong 64. We got Mario Kart 64. Bomberman 64. Harvest Moon 64. Like
all of them.
This is my childhood.
Yeah.
This is my childhood. And like I said in last week's, Harvest Moon 64 was one of the greatest games I ever played. And like anyone who's obsessed with Animal Crossing now should go back and play
Harvest Moon.
Harvest Moon 64. Yeah. And actually, in fact, go back and play Animal Crossing for the N64.
Animal Crossing was on N64?
It was either 64 or the Cube.
I know
it was the Cube because you could connect your Game Boy Advance to it. But go back and play Harvest Moon 64.
There's so many.
If you watch Vinland Saga Season 2 and enjoyed it, go back and play Harvest Moon 64.
Yeah, go play Harvest Moon, right. I'm looking at the list that we made for these games, and like each one of them. All right, so Star Fox 64 is the game that everyone associates as Star Fox's very first game, right?
Right.
They don't realize that Star Fox actually had a game on the Super Nintendo. That's where you get the infamous dual barrel roll.
Fox, I can't do it.
You're on my tail, Fox.
Right.
Oh, slippery. Like, you also had Doom 64, Banjo-Kazooie. That's where, I talked about it. I don't know if I talked about it. I think it was like during a break I talked about it. But I bought an Xbox Series X just so I could play Banjo-Kazooie. It was the very first, not just so I could play Banjo-Kazooie. That was just a happy little
accident. That's just
accident.
all you ended up playing on it.
It was the very first game. I was like, oh, I actually bought it originally for Lost Odyssey because I like RPGs.
Okay.
So Banjo-Kazooie, Paper Mario. It's also, I think the Paper Mario, that's where the franchise started, was then 64.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I'm like 90% sure that's where it started.
Yeah, Mario 64, where you just basically played till the third level just so you could race the penguin down the sledding and then drop the baby penguin off the side.
I'm going to tease you with a fact, but I won't explain the fact until we do the inevitable episode that we're going to discuss, right? Did you know that Ocarina of Time... No, yeah, Ocarina of Time almost had the same mechanic as Super Mario 64?
Interesting.
Yeah, I won't
So
go
just-
into detail.
Okay.
But-
I'm not even going to ask questions
There are
because
assets
it's
that
going
are
to come up.
used eventually that I'll explain to you about why, but...
Is that why you can backflip and beat the game in 10 minutes?
No, all right.
We're not going to go
Can't
into
go
it.
into it, right.
We're not going to go into it.
Also, I guess we should also say Majora's Mask also exists.
And
on
Majora's
N64.
Mask was
Yeah,
also on there.
I'm
You know, just too amazing.
Yeah, that's
It's
how
just-
I got my expansion pack.
We looked it up on Nintendo Life, and the first and the second most popular Nintendo 64 games just happened to be Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time.
Yep.
But to keep some level of secrecy and, you know, like, I don't know, titillation, I won't tell you which one was first.
All right. There was also Mario Kart 64, which a lot of people, that was their first foray into the Mario Kart games.
Exactly. And then here's
Rainbow Road,
the big
Ended
guys.
Friendships.
Mario Party.
Mario Party.
1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
And you can always tell if you had a friend that played Mario Party because they don't have any skin left on the center of their palm.
Thank you for pointing that out because I got a factoid about that because of Mario Party. So Mario Party, because of all the mini games that had like the spinning.
Yeah, spin it as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Or, you know, button
Right?
mash it. How many controllers were broken during this?
Oh yeah.
I know
so
I
many.
have like so many loose joysticks where it's like you have to ram it to the side just to move.
I literally I had a broken controller that I was trying to play with my me and my cousin were playing GoldenEye because he used to always beat me at GoldenEye because he was older than me.
Okay.
And then like I recently brought out my N64 and I was like, hey, let's play, right? Like I've been playing video games for a very long time now. You're like a grown man and you don't like, you know, but
Right,
like,
he actually became that doctor lawyer.
yeah,
that we talked
right.
about.
So like let's play, right? And I smoked him. Now his controller that he used like had the drift where like his character would start spinning around. Because my controller's broken. That's why he beat me. And I was like, I refuse to let you finally like lose to me in GoldenEye. I refuse to let this be the excuse to why you lost to me. Give me the broken controller. So literally what happened was like you would go forward and if you stopped to shoot, your character would start spinning around, right? So like you had to go forward and you would start spinning like when you pulled your gun out. So I literally was like, oh, I know exactly how I'm gonna do this. So I would run forward and I would start spinning and like right as like I would line up with him, I would pull the trigger and shoot.
Oh,
So I
so
would
so in a shooting
spin
game
around,
you would aim at him and fire your
while I
gun
was
to
spinning.
win.
Yeah, I said I still won.
Dude, just equip the AK-47 and let the controller do the rest.
I beat you fair and square, both with a real controller and a broken controller. Yeah, I finally got my revenge on GoldenEye. It's all that matters.
And that game was,
So
I don't know. I
I'm
mean,
actually
like,
playing
still
it right
to
now on the
this
Series
day,
X because
like
it just came out.
GoldenEye is just amazing and
They-
holds up. It's
They just released it for the Series X and the Switch with the N64 expansion.
Did you ever play the it was called like James Bond Rogue Agent or something like that where you played through GoldenEye but you played as Alec Trevelyan instead of Bond?
I do want to point like to do a little touch on, right? So GoldenEye is based off of the Pierce Brosnan movie GoldenEye, and GoldenEye is my favorite like 007 game, but it's based off of my least favorite
movie.
Bond. Like Bond in general, like I do not
don't like Pierce
I
Brosnan?
do not like Pierce Brosnan as a Bond.
Oh my god. Okay, Bond has to be an episode in and of itself.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I could.
'Cause I'll go back and rewatch all the episodes or all the movies.
All the movies. Oh,
All the
I own
movies.
them all.
I won't
So,
read the books. I refuse to do that.
I also own the
I
books
don't
too.
read. I don't know how to read.
But yeah, so my factoid about Super Mario Party, right? So because so many kids were like losing skin on the palm of their hand, there was a collective of like moms that like tried to sue. I was gonna say Disney, but when you think of a collective
sue
of
them
moms
too.
and suing, they're always like it's always Disney. Disney's always getting sued by somebody. Angry moms. Oh, how dare you have two girls kiss in a movie?
It's probably because Walt Disney is a racist Nazi. Let's just keep suing him.
Let's just go past that. So they sued Nintendo because it was causing like blisters in the palm of people's hands and on their thumb because like the massive amount of spinning, right? So Nintendo decided like, oh, this is what we're gonna do. we're going to make a special glove that you can order, and we will ship it to you free of charge if you actually are having this issue, right? Like, so like these moms sued, and that was Nintendo's like rebuttal. They're like, all right, well, we'll do this. If your kids' hands are actually getting hurt playing our games, you can order the special glove. And if you get it, like, we'll ship it to you. You just send in the request and we'll ship it to you for free, right?
All I'm picturing right now is like a fingerless lifting glove with like the N64 logo.
They were fingerless gloves. Yeah. It was a fingerless gray glove.
I'm about that. And while we're talking about mini games on the N64, I think we also need to jump into the wonderful world of Pokemon.
Oh, God.
Because then we had Pokemon Stadium.
And the infamous Clefairy follow-along game.
Oh, my God. Okay, so that game sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, was amazing, but sucked.
Right.
The Magikarp game was amazing.
Yes.
The Lickitung Eat the Food game was amazing.
I love that game.
The Diglett game, which I think was just like Whack-A-Mole or something.
Yeah, it was Whack-A-Mole.
Yeah, it was Whack-A-Mole. You could get the shiny Doug Trios and get like quadruple points. But then the other thing that brought in to Pokemon Stadium was the Game Boy attachment, where you can play Game Boy games on your TV for the first time ever.
Yes, so much fun.
So this is also going to lead us into the next part, because there's another game that came out called Pokemon Snap.
Yes.
Which was amazing, and I'm not going to go into too much details, but I'm going to throw it out there. Wizard and the Bruiser has a Pokemon Snap episode, which is definitely worth the listen. Check them out. They're great. That's where I get 90% of my information from. But Pokemon Snap did a thing where they teamed up with, I think it was Game Crazy. But they put the Pokemon printable machines in there, so you could take your Pokemon Snap games into this little kiosk, plug it in there, and you could actually print out the pictures that you took.
I think it was Funkoland, actually.
We did not have one of them in our hometown.
Yeah. Because Funkoland got bought out eventually by GameStop.
Okay, so that's what I'm thinking of. Because we had a Hollywood Video that had
Game Crazy.
But
Game Crazy didn't come in until way later. That's why I know that's not correct.
Okay.
That's the only reason why I know it's not, because I worked at Game Crazy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I went in there and printed out pictures. I printed out my Pokemon Snap pictures somewhere.
Blockbuster had one.
Was it Blockbuster?
Blockbuster definitely had it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
that you could also get scratch and sniff Pokemon things there for the eventual Pokemon movie.
Yes.
Yep.
And then eventually they actually we'll touch on this in the Game Boy episode, but they came out with a printer that you could buy.
Yeah.
For Pokemon Snap and
for the Game Boy
what was
camera.
The fucking Game Boy camera?
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that thing.
Oh my God.
I loved that thing. I used to make little like slideshow like flipbook animation movies.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah. So one thing I want to touch on real quickly is also so N64 its competitor when it launched was the Sony PlayStation, right?
Correct.
So at the time, the Sega Genesis was still around, trying to be relevant by making like a bunch of attachments. That's why we got the Sega Saturn, the Sega CD, all that stuff, right? Like all that stuff also was around at the same time, but it really was like it was nothing, right? But the real competitor to the N64 was the Sony PlayStation, and what's interesting, I told you this earlier, but you do not get the Sony PlayStation without Nintendo's direct involvement. Nintendo made its killer, right? Because say what you want about Nintendo, like as a company, right? It undersold after the 64, both the PlayStation 2 and the PlayStation 3, right? I don't know if that's fully true, but like from like nerd standings, like how I felt, like PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2 crushed, right? Like they just did. We could do a whole video on just the PlayStation saga.
They were
as well.
like the adult version of games.
PS2 is the greatest console of all time. I will say that without a doubt. There's no doubt in my mind. I love Nintendo. Love Nintendo. I own every Nintendo console. I still have them in my room. But the PS2, without a doubt, is by far the best console that ever existed.
I'm a Nintendo man, and
right.
The only PlayStation I own is a PS2.
Yeah, it's so
I needed it for Budokai.
But you do not get PlayStation without Nintendo deciding early on, before even the N64 was released. Nintendo understood that the actual like CD market, because this is when like compact discs started becoming relevant in the mid 90s. So like they realized that like compact discs are coming. They're the new thing. Everyone's like enjoying them. So they developed with they combined forces with Philips Interactive and Sony to make the CDI. All right, I have to bring this relevant because it's the only time I'm going to touch on this, because the CDI gave us the only 3 Zelda games that were actually made like on non-Nintendo hardware. You have The Legend of Zelda, The Wand of Gamelon, Link, The Faces of Evil, and Zelda's Adventure. In fact, like just gotta say it right there, it's the only 2 games where it's the only 2 games in the Zelda franchise where Zelda is the main character. Got Wand of Gamelon and Zelda's Adventure. So it's funny that like the CDI is the only time where Zelda got to shine in her actual own, with the name of her game. Anyways, I digress. I can go into that when we do our inevitable episode. There's a lot actually to talk about those 3 games.
Enough. My ship sails in the morning. I wonder what's for dinner.
Oh boy, I'm so hungry I could eat an Octorok.
But Nintendo scrapped the idea after like I think like a year or 2, and then the CDI
was just a
came
money
out.
issue at that point, right?
It was a money issue, and just like I think like just the tech just wasn't there, and that was back in 1990. Now Nintendo would finally make its own disc-based attachment before the GameCube, and that was the 64DD, the 64 disc drive. I don't know any games that actually existed on the 64DD. There's a couple. I know there has to be at least a couple. There's no way they would make it. I mean, like, there's at least 32 games on the Virtual Boy.
Right.
Or the whatever that thing was called. I think it was called the Virtual Boy.
Mm-hmm. Pornomatic.
But yeah, that was Sony's first foray into video games, and they decided to like, well, let's take what we learned with working with Philips to make the CDI, and let's take that and let's build on it, because the game market was now flourishing. Companies outside of Sony and Sega were saying like, oh, there's money to be made in video games again. And then Sony decided to take what it took from its knowledge with the partner with Nintendo and made the PlayStation 1. So honestly, if Nintendo did not ask Sony and Philip to make the CDI, we do not have the PlayStation franchise. So thank you, Nintendo, but also like you made your destroyer, like, because sadly that led to eventually the Xbox stepping into the market.
Every hero needs a villain,
right?
They really do.
I think like now luckily Nintendo decides to not even compete.
Nintendo's
like,
in its own culture.
It's like, we don't need to compete with you because we are our own thing.
Nintendo, what I can respect about them is they are still one of the only systems that you can play multiplayer on.
Yep.
Like that is not an option on PlayStation or Xbox.
I do not have,
unless you're willing to pay $30 a month for online shit.
Yeah. I don't think there was something. So there is couch co-op available for GoldenEye that just came out for the Xbox Series X. I do know that.
Well, I mean, that's because they literally had to design nothing else.
Right.
They were just like, yeah, let's just copy all the data and bring it over.
So,
the N64, I think, too, is probably the last system where you're getting these random one-off games that aren't necessarily part of like a franchise.
Right.
Because I mean, you look at what the Switch is putting out right now, and besides all like the what do you call them? Random like fan made games or whatever. Like all the downloadable stuff.
Right.
Their main titles that they're releasing are just Mario and Rabbids and Metroid. Like their core group. But with Rabbids the N64, but it's on Nintendo.
It is on Nintendo, yes.
And it's partnered up with Mario. So
it is.
But the N64, you also had these crazy side games. So like battle tanks. Like we don't see battle tanks anymore.
No.
And it was amazing.
Army Soldiers also got its start on the N64.
Yep.
Now it did have a resurgence in the PlayStation era. Like there was a bunch of Army Soldiers games on the PlayStation. I do remember that, but it got its start on the 64, but then it died.
Unfortunately, we are coming to the time limit that we put on ourselves
right.
for the
It's
N64.
like, again,
And
it's that conversation where like again, there's so many games.
but
So,
let's quick shot this.
quick
All right.
shot.
All right. So we got Conker's Bad Fur Day. This is also another Rareware game that came out
Yep.
about a horny squirrel. Like,
Did it ever get a second game?
yes, it
Okay.
did.
All right,
Not
all right.
for not for Nintendo though, because
okay.
Rareware jump shipped after the N64.
It did.
It did. So that went to Microsoft. I think it was Conker's Fully Loaded is what it was called.
It was fully loaded. Yep.
We also had Diddy Kong Racing, which is one of
Yes.
the greatest games, which cannot be made by Nintendo anymore. They
It
lost
can't.
the rights to
Yeah.
Diddy Kong
It's the
or
only thing
Diddy
that-
Kong Racing.
It's the only thing they actually lost in the Rareware crossover.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Which sucks because
It's so great.
I still think Nintendo just needs to put out Donkey Kong Racing
Yeah.
and just make it Diddy Kong 2. But, that's
Yeah, got Wave Race.
Wave Race, which was great. And I mean,
Fantastic.
just to expand upon that, like we also had 1080. So we got Wave Race, which was jet skis.
Right.
We got 1080, which was snowboarding. We got Snowboard Kids,
Love
which was
Snowboard Kids.
also snowboarding, except
Yes.
it had like a Rayman type animation to it.
And had like the little items and things like it was like Mario Kart.
It was like Mario Kart, which I mean, okay.
But snowboarding.
Well, then Mario Kart. We also got Cruisin' World.
Yes.
We got Cruisin' Exotica. We got Star Wars Pod Racer.
Star Wars Pod Racing.
I
Yep.
mean, so
going 1,000 miles per hour is so fun. even
1,000
though you
miles.
weren't going-
which from oh my god, from what I've heard, that's like the only Star Wars game worth playing on the game or on the N64.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say, well, I mean the new one, the Fallen Order, or I think it was called, was actually good. But we're talking N64.
We're talking
yes.
N64.
Yeah. It was the only good one. Because I think there was a Phantom Menace game. Because this is around the time when we got Phantom Menace.
Yes,
Prequels.
yes. Because I mean, Podcast came out Pod Racer came out
Racer.
pretty much as Phantom Menace came out because
Yeah.
that was the only good part about that
It was the only
movie.
thing good about that movie.
Well, and Darth Maul, and Liam Neeson.
And Liam Neeson.
And then just to round off the sports, we also were introduced to Mario Golf and Mario Tennis, which
Yes.
came out on that, which were both fantastic games.
Mario Golf and Mario Tennis and Mario Golf are made by Camelot Studios, which eventually gave us the best RPG on a Nintendo game. But we'll touch on that when we get into the Game Boy discussion.
Is it Dragon Quest?
Nope.
Okay.
It's Golden Sun.
Golden Sun.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't hear that.
Sorry. Bleep that.
So we've
Bleep
had
that.
all of these amazing games, and we need to end the N64 game or the N64 episode with the game that ties it all together, which is still probably one of the top grossing Nintendo games.
It is.
Super Smash
Super
Brothers.
Smash Brothers.
Or, I'm sorry, I didn't do that justice. One of the greatest games ever created, and it took every franchise that Nintendo has put out to this point and put it in there. All 10 of them.
Yeah, I mean, just like
So our original lineup, we got Mario, Luigi.
Yep.
We got Donkey Kong. We got Bowser. Was Bowser in the
Bowser
original 10?
wasn't in
Bowser
Super
was
Melee.
not. I know we got Captain Falcon.
Yep.
I know we got Pikachu.
Yep.
We got Jigglypuff.
Yes.
We got
Kirby.
Ness, Kirby, Samus, and Link.
Yes.
Did I miss anyone?
I think you're missing.
I'm missing 2 people.
I think you're missing 2.
Was there 12?
Ah, man. Oh, no. I'm breaking the rules.
There had to be more Mario people.
Yes. Hold up. I'm getting there. I think Yoshi. Yoshi was also,
Yoshi was in there.
So Yoshi.
And then who's the last one?
So there was 12. So Mario, Luigi, Donkey Kong, Link, Samus, Yoshi, Kirby, Fox.
Fox.
You didn't say Fox.
I didn't say Fox. So this was Nintendo's way to kind of say, here's all the other games you didn't know about.
So when people
Come play us.
remember when like people back in the day were like, Endgame's like the biggest collaboration of all time, and I'm like, Super Smash Brothers.
Super Smash Brothers.
Super Smash
Which,
Brothers.
I mean, we gotta respect. So on the N64, we had 12 characters.
Yes.
On the GameCube, I think we had like 30 characters or
I think it was
something
like
like
32, 36.
that. Something like that. And then
Yeah.
we had the Wii version, which upped up to like 50, and I think the
50.
Switch has like 85 or something now.
a
It's like,
lot.
I mean, granted, 90% of that's Fire Emblem for
is
some
Fire Emblem.
stupid reason.
It's still
But-
it's tied with Mario characters now. Fire Emblem has not overtaken Mario characters for the most amount of like franchise per game.
Okay, cool.
So the
cool.
Mario franchise is tied with the Fire Emblem franchise.
So it's Mario, Fire Emblem, and I feel like Pokemon has to be third.
You know, the worst part is unless they add more, unless they start making new Mario like IPs to like be brought into it,
right.
it's Fire Emblem's eventually going to overtake Mario
It's going to have to.
because there's always more Fire Emblem characters coming out. Yeah,
That's unfortunate.
generic looking Fire Emblem characters.
Yeah, I knew it was going
said it.
downhill too when they introduced the Squidbillies. But
Oh, the Splatoons.
we're a couple episodes away
yeah, we're
from
a couple
this.
episodes from that.
But
Um,
Super Smash Brothers is probably like, if I had to say top 3 games for GameCube, my list.
Mhm.
Fuck, I can't even do 3. I'm gonna do top 5 games
Okay.
for GameCube. So I got Perfect Dark,
Okay.
GoldenEye, Mario Kart 64, Super Smash Brothers, and for me 1080. I'm gonna replace that with Diddy Kong. I'm gonna say Diddy Kong over
I
1080.
respect that. For me, it's obviously Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask.
I didn't include them because
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, all right. So if it's our 5 without the ones that we can't talk about,
I loved Ocarina of Time so much.
right?
I played through and restarted it just to fully complete it 17 full times.
I can believe that. If we're not including the forbidden games that we can't talk about, so then I would have to say Mario 64, GoldenEye, obviously. Snowboard Kids, I love that game.
Snowboard Kids was amazing.
Snowboard Kids was so much fun. It's so much fun. Dang, it's hard when you had to exclude like the two.
I mean, we just
fantasy-
listed off 40 good games.
Banjo-Kazooie.
Okay.
I love Banjo-Kazooie, even though I didn't beat it when I was a kid. That's
I
the
don't
reason
think
why
I beat any game as a kid.
No, yeah. The only game I ever beat as a kid, honestly, like N64 era back, the only two games I ever beat like as kids, was Ocarina of Time
Yep.
and Super Mario World. Only 2 games I've ever beat when I was like actually an adolescent. Like
All right.
N64, towards the end of the N64 going to PlayStation 1, I was like 12. So like I'm just now coming out. So like my skills have been molded from the NES, the SNES, and the N64. So now going into the GameCube and the PS1 into the eventual PS2 era, my skills were like now top notch.
Right.
So now I can actually beat games.
You're the big man on
I'm a
campus.
big man, even though I was
Yeah.
only 12.
You're coming around beating these games. Yeah. 40% of them because you didn't know about the side quests.
Yeah, you didn't know about the side quests unless you got the strategy guide.
Right.
But yeah, if it's those 3, Doom 64, because I love Doom. I still love Doom.
The first time I saw Doom was my neighbor playing it, and I actually got nightmares.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
I have-
I had to not play.
The soldiers scream when they get shot by like the guns in the game. Like I can hear it in my head. Like that is a soundbite that lives rent
Nein,
free.
mein Gott, Himmel.
That would be Castle
That's
Wolfenstein.
Castlevania.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
Wolfenstein,
Not
yeah.
Castlevania.
Sorry.
Wolfenstein. Then I guess we're gonna throw it in there. Probably Bomberman 64.
Bomberman was dope.
Yeah.
Bomberman was dope. There was also a Tron game that was pretty dope for the 64.
As great as Super Smash was, I was a Street Fighter kid. So I was still playing Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo. So like as far as fighting games go, like Super Smash just did not live up to it for me because I liked Street Fighter and I liked Tekken. Like those were my fighting games. Now, it's fine. I respect the crap out of Super Smash Brothers. It's not my cup of tea. But yeah, the N64, I mean, fantastic. It's probably the quintessential console for me as a child.
It's my console. It's what I will declare my console.
It's the game. It's the console where like I started to like branch out and do other games that weren't like Super Mario and Zelda. Yeah.
Do you really need anything else though?
I literally have said it, and I'll say it again. I'll say it on this web. I'll say it here. If Nintendo, you're chiming in, you could sell $1,000 system, and the only game that exists on it is the new Zelda game, and no other games come out for that system, I will buy.
You will
system.
still run out of stock.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
you could charge $1,000 for Tears of the Kingdom and people would buy it. I would buy it, unfortunately.
I bought a Wii U for the express purpose of playing the next Zelda game, and
I might buy a new Switch just to play Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah,
because I have Gen 1 Switch and I
get the LED one.
Yeah,
I can respect that.
So we'll see how next month plays out.
So, anyways, I think that's going to be it for the N64. Again, stress this again. I cannot stress this enough. We know for a fact we did not touch everything. Like this again, like every Nintendo system could be like 5 or 10 episodes if we were to go through the entirety. This is just saying like, hey, this is the N64. This is some fond memories that we had. Here's some like quirky little facts that we remember.
I mean, we said it in the beginning. This was a 5-year system.
Yeah.
And we just tried to push it into a half an hour. So we know we missed things.
Oh, yeah, so many.
And please, like, we love nothing more than nostalgia.
Yeah.
So
talk to us about the
talk
games
to
that
us,
we didn't
comment.
talk about. Yeah.
Reach out to us. Call us idiots for not
How
fucking
could you not remember
recognizing
Boob Man.
Yeah, Boob Man, the 1997 greatest game that ever came out.
Like, just why'd you forget Boob Man?
Yeah,
You know?
the game that never came out in America. You had to special order it through South Korea or something.
Exactly.
I don't know. Let us know. We do zero prep work.
Yeah,
we probably missed all the fun games.
Oh yeah,
all of them. I mean, we're gonna sign off and be like, "Fuck,
God." So,
anyway, tune in next week we're gonna chime in and say, "Hey, we forgot to mention this last week." But until then, I'm not Mike,
and I'm not Pat,
and we'll see you around.
See you around.
A whole month gone, and still no word.
I'm certain he's all right.
Yeah, that old Ganon's no match for the king.
Link, go to Gamelon and find my father.
Great! I can't wait to bomb some Dodongos!